Thank you, brother. I'll bring up our host, Abdul Hakim. Unmute your mics. Welcome, my brother. Let's get the energy going. Make sure you've got your pads, your notepads, ready to take notes as I am. Welcome, brother. Unmute yourself, people. Unmute yourself.
Welcome to you too, and to everybody who's joining us. Thank you. Well, it's a very hugely anticipated evening and discussion that some of our family members have been waiting for ever since they left the Caribbean and left Africa and came to the United Kingdom and other parts of the world, right? We've been trying to learn, how do we keep what we earn? And this is a struggle for most people during life. How do we keep what we earn? And it's staggering that the vast majority of, our family members don't have wills, and we don't know how to protect what we have spent, most of our years on the planet trying to accumulate for the advantage and benefit of our family. And then comes the mafia, otherwise known as the Inland Revenue, to come and take what our family has worked hard for. So we're looking forward, and I'm looking forward, 60 years later, to learn and to grasp this knowledge so I can share it with as many of our family members and people as possible. So those of you who are on the call right now, you've got about 60 seconds to make a quick phone call, to send a text message, to try to encourage somebody who has a bit of assets. They own their own home, or they've got some money stashed. They've got big plans for the future. Anybody who like that, take out the next 60 seconds to try to get them on this Zoom call, because this is vital information. Nobody's doing this on the level that we're doing. Nobody. This is streaming live, on Facebook. This is going throughout the world. This is being translated in the French language as we speak. This is being translated in Serbia. This is being translated in Madagascar. Why? Because we need to know how to protect what we accumulate in the short life that we have been blessed to have. Okay? So with that said, 20 seconds left for those of you who started 40 seconds ago. So I'm going to take the next 15 seconds to welcome our beautiful, beautiful special guest today, a sister who has dedicated her life to try to help you and I to hold on to what we have been blessed to acquire. There used to be an old song, Sister Norma, that used to go, hold on to what you got, hold on to what you've got. But Dennis Brown was singing about a woman. So we're trying to speak about some money today, some property, so we can park Dennis, because he made a lot of money and died broke. So let's focus on how we can, ensure that we pass on to our loved ones that which we work hard to acquire. So spiritual injection, please, as you've been taught, take your devices off of mute and show love, show respect, show honor, gratitude, and appreciation for our special guest, Sister Norma Wright. Thank you, Sister Norma.
Welcome, sister.
Welcome, bienvenue.
Thank you.
Welcome.
What a lovely welcome. I hope you haven't bigged me up too much, host. I'm not familiar with Dennis Brown. I'm familiar with a lot of other reg artists, but Dennis Brown is not one of them. Okay. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Norma Wright, and my company is HTD Consults UK. I'll tell you what HTD stands for. It stands for Honest, Truthful Dialogue. I'm consulting the whole of the UK and internationally, encouraging our community and our people to put their documents in order. Okay, we have a fear of doing a will, and a will is a legal document that tells people what you want to happen with your assets when you're not here to tell them. That's all it is. The fear factor in a will is something that we have been carrying for generations. We are now in the UK. The Windrush generation have come here. They've amassed a fortune. They have children. They have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And what they're leaving as a legacy is almost nothing. I have been a lawyer for the best part of 45 years, and I have seen money hemorrhage out of our community like nobody's business. And I'm going to put it on the line to everybody here. Look at what the Asians do. Look at what the Chinese do. Look at what other cultures do. They amass a fortune and pass it on via another family member, usually in a trust. What we do is we leave things, we leave it to 9-9. There's a big argument. After the big argument, who is the winner? It's not the family members. It's not the people that you want to leave a legacy to. It's the lawyers, people like me. Okay, that is not fair. Okay, so in terms of that, my company is here to tell you and everybody that is interested to put your documents in order. Wills, trusts, lasting powers of attorney, and everything else in between, okay? We are going to break everything down over the next 3 weeks. So while I heard one lady, Tara, say that she looked online and thought that she knew what a trust was, Tara, there are over 125 trusts. And if you looked online for 3 or 4, you're missing so many more. This is where I have retrained as a professional estate planner. And a professional estate planner looks at the whole of your estate. People think their estate is the bricks and mortar they're sitting in. It's not. When the government comes after your money, it's not coming after your house. It's coming after everything that you own and leave as at the date of your demise. Your furniture is worth something. The necklaces you're wearing is worth something. The pictures in your house is worth something. The plants in your house is worth something. That is the sum total of your estate. Money, assets, and the building. Don't forget, ladies, we have a nice favorite pots and pans. Yes, we have a nice favorite crockery. That is also part of the estate. And on our demise, we have to tell somebody who we want to have our favorite pieces of silver or our crockery, etc. This is what I do. I look at the whole of your estate and tell you how best to secure that as a legacy for generations to come. Not only your children, but your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. If you remember when the Queen died and Charles inherited the estate, there was not a penny of tax paid. Do you remember?
Yeah.
The reason why there was not a penny of tax paid is because the royal estate is tied up in a trust for perpetuity, ever and ever and ever. It passes from one generation to the other. On the death
Did you say
of
from
one,
one fief to the other?
other.
You say from one fief to the other?
No, I did not. I'm going to be really respectful. Okay, I'm not going to get. I've delved in politics, but I'm not going to get into that tonight.
You, Norma.
Yeah. If you want that argument with me, it's another program. Okay, but in terms of that, the trust, the royal trust, sovereign trust, has lasted for generations. They have put laws in place at the moment that trusts can only last for 125 years. You see how they have organized things so that we only have a trust for at least 3 generations, 4 at the maximum. The other thing as well is the nil rate band. Everybody in the land is entitled to own £325,000 before they start paying 40% tax on the whole of their estate by way of inheritance tax. So a husband has £325,000. A wife has £325,000. But if you pass your estate onto your direct descendants by way of a will, by way of a residence nil rate band trust, which is something I'm sure you didn't find, Tara, you can actually save your estate another £175,000. But everything has to be drafted properly, legally, registered with the HMRC, and because on the 1st of September, they brought in the trust registration rules. So therefore, this is where I come in. This is my specialist subject, estate planning, writing trust, drafting trust, put people's estates into an order where your estate is passed from generation to generation to generation, if that's what you want. Have a look around you. Everybody's sitting in a building. And whilst you're sitting in a building, if you have a mortgage, you cannot say that you own that building 100%. It's not yours to do with what you want. It's the building society and yours to do with what you want. Okay? If you need more money and you need to register a second charge against a property, you need the permission of the building society or the bank that holds the first charge. So therefore, until the mortgage is paid up 100% and you have the title deeds, that is when you can say the property is yours. Is that clear? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Can I have a show of heads? All I'm seeing is eyes at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's interact. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we look at your estate and say, okay, joint tenants, tenants in common. Are you married? Are you not married? How can I secure this with a restriction? How can I secure that with a restriction? What part of the estate do you want to go where, why, etc.? We look at all that for you and put the legalities in place to protect your hard-earned asset. Okay? Is that clear? That's the basis of what I do. Can I have nodded heads, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If it's not clear, somebody put it in the chat box, and then I will go over the preamble again. Okay, all clear, right? Can I move on to the next part? Let's talk about wills. A will is an instruction to your executors to tell your executors what to do with your estate. That's all a will is. A will does not take effect until your demise. You have executors, you have beneficiaries, you have specific gifts that you want to give, you have pecuniary gifts. In a will, we can set up a discretionary trust. A discretionary trust is that by its nature, you can say to your executors, I want this put into trust, but it's your executive, when push comes to shove, will decide whether or not it's possible to carry out your wishes. That's why it's important, if you've paid off for your house, you put your house into trust for your family under an asset trust or a living trust. They're both the same type of trusts, plus you have a right to live in the house. It's not yours. The house then becomes the property of the trust, but you have something called a life interest to live in the house until your demise. And then on your demise, the house is either transferred to your beneficiaries, or it's kept in trust so that your house is an income for generations. So they can rent the house out, and then the income is payable to the beneficiaries. Okay. Nodding heads, or have I confused?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
That's one thing. The drafting of trusts is a specialist art. Property has actually fallen and gone by the wayside by way of sideways disinheritance because the documents have not been correctly drawn. Case in point, everybody's heard of Karl Lagerfeld?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody knows who he left his money to.
Yes. Wonderful
A cat. Can the cat spend money?
Of course he can.
Okay. This cat can spend money via a human.
Right.
Therefore, Karl Lagerfeld's money is in trust for the cat, who is the beneficiary, but the trustee, i.e. the person who has power to spend the money for the benefit of the trust, has control of the money. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So this is how a trust works on a very, very basic level. You have bare trusts, you have disabled trust, you have trust for vulnerable kids, i.e. if you think that one of your children will spend their money that you leave them willy-nilly, you do not have to give it to them when you die. You put that money in trust and say, when you are 35, that's when you get it. When you finished your degree in college, that's when you get it. That's when somebody shows the trustees the certificate. That's when you get your money. You control who gets your money via a trust, and the trust is set up via the will, in addition to very many other avenues. All right? Yeah?
Yes.
Rowena Hafens, you're looking blank.
Wakey.
Okay. Any questions so far?
There was a question in the chat asking who manages the trust.
The trust can actually be managed by people called trustees. The settler is the person that sets up the trust. The trustees are the people who manage the trust. The trustees can also be the beneficiaries. Okay, so you can have a dual role. So when you are choosing trustees, make sure that they are what the word suggests. People that you can trust to spend your money for the benefit of the benefit. There's also companies that oversee trusts such as mine, and we can manage the trust on behalf of the settler for the beneficiary.
I was
Okay.
going to ask you, Norma, so how do you mitigate a trustee who is also a beneficiary, not going loopy or changing their attitude towards the other beneficiaries once the main person is deceased?
Okay, easy. A beneficiary must request funds outside the remit of the trust in writing.
Right.
The trustees have the power to grant that wish or not, depending on the wording in the trust deed. The trust deed is the Bible that can say, only give the beneficiaries one lump sum to buy their first property and no more.
But can the trustee make it difficult for the beneficiary to, sorry?
The trustee, can usually be voted, because if you've got 3 trustees, 1 says no, 2 says yes, it's carried. But it's the trust deed. That's why I'm saying the wording of the trust deed must be particular.
Right.
Okay. And say, okay, is there a quorum? If there's a quorum, or all trustees, all 3 must agree. If 3 do not agree, then there's no consensus. The beneficiary cannot have any funds outside the remit of the terms of the trust. Okay. Does that answer your question, Abdul?
Thank you.
Okay, so therefore, that's why I'm saying the wording and the drafting of a trust deed is particularly important because it's your direction to people who are your descendants as to how your money should be spent. I've written a trust, and I'm not going to tell you who for, that's not very professional, but I've written a life interest trust. So the wife says, okay, this is my property. I bought it before I got married to this person, this man. All right? I want my property to be for my daughter and my son. I do not want him to have any part of it. This is a scenario for you. If he marries, if he brings a woman into the house, if he wears red socks, therefore I'm not going to give him rights to live in my property. So therefore you're controlling your asset from beyond the grave. Yes, that is called a life interest trust. He can live in my house as long as A, B, C, D. But when he no longer wants to live in my house, you can do one of two things. You can sell it and buy him a smaller property, but the income from the money that is left over, if you downsize, must go to my residue estate, i.e. must go to my children. When he dies, the smaller property that you bought will go to my children. Okay, that's one instance. Yes.
That sounds like a nice woman there.
Okay, men too. Men too. There is something called a secret trust. I'm not just going to favor females. I'm going to tell you just something that can be done. And I listen, if I'm going off key, tell me. There is something called a secret trust.
Point. You're on point.
There's something called a secret trust. A man may have a sweetheart or somebody outside the family that he doesn't want his wife to know about.
But she already knows.
Create a secret trust, okay? And this is created under very special circumstances so that when he dies, his wife gets what she knows that she should get, but his sweetheart or whatever gets what she is to get because it's written in trust. Those are his directions. That is it. Yeah. So, you know, even though you're trying as much as you can to find out about trusts, 45 years experience will tell this is what you're getting the benefit of.
Norma, it's interesting you should say this because I was listening to a video from Mr. Jerry Springer in the week, and he has 2 children, I believe, outside of his marriage, but he was rebuking himself for being too cowardly to look after his children and putting his career first. So when he knew age was on him and he didn't have much time left, he said that he left every piece of property to his 2 children who he did not look after because he was a coward during his lifetime. He left his entire estate to the 2 of them. So this is typical of what you're actually saying?
Very, very similar. But let's have a look at how he left it. Did he leave it totally and nothing for his wife, or did he provide for his wife and his ordinary family?
From the video, he went total.
Okay, that is where his estate is up for challenge. Because the wife will say, I put half of my life's earnings into this. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. Jerry, whatever you've done for your sweetheart is wrong. I'm coming after it. And this is where, sorry, bear with me.
Okay, as she gets situated, this is very controversial.
Sorry, I'm just about to blank out there. I didn't put the plug in the
We can't have you
but listen, this is where Jerry could have been wrong.
Right.
Let me tell you why. Because the wife would have put her hard earnings, her blood, sweat, and tears into the property in the estate as well.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the wife and the ordinary children should be kept in the manner to which Jerry has brought them up to. So therefore, the first thing I see here is a lawsuit.
Right.
So who profits from the lawsuit? Not the children, not the wife, but the funds for the lawsuit are taken from the estate and the lawyers profit. Okay. So whilst Jerry thinks he's doing something clever, he should have come and seen me.
Or you should have admitted.
Yeah, or even admit it or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's,
And
do
done
you
his
understand what I'm
goodness.
saying, people? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a very
There's
good
many,
point.
many different ways to skin a cat. Okay. Now, in terms of wills, the will is an instruction for the executors to do something with your assets after you've gone. But don't forget, your assets may not only be in this country. The assets could be abroad. And where you die, where you have your home, where your domicile is all a factor within how much tax you may or may not pay. Yes? So this is interesting, okay? Whether or not you own your property as a joint tenant, tenants in common, with a trust, with restrictions, all sorts of things on it. There's lots to go into. And I think law for me has been my life's work, and it's been interesting. I love it. I absolutely love what I do. And that's where I have the passion to share with everybody and say, listen, get yourself in order. During COVID, I had 5 of my friends on life support machines at Norfolk Park Hospital. The families called me and said, what can be done? I said nothing, because I need to take instructions from the person that wants me to garner and distribute their estate. I need to take those instructions from the person. I cannot take instructions third party, except in certain circumstances. And the circumstances, if somebody is physically impaired and cannot tell me to take instructions, there are mechanisms for me to take instructions from a third party on their behalf. If somebody is blind, cannot write, there's a mechanism for me to actually get the will signed in the presence of 2 witnesses on their behalf. Yes? So this is where everything comes in. During COVID, I had somebody that called me as a matter of urgency. Her partner of 20 years died in bed next to her. She had done a will. He didn't do a will. They both have separate properties. Because he didn't do a will, his next of kin was his son. The son inherited the property. She got nothing. She didn't even have a say in how her partner of 20 years should be buried. All because he didn't do a will. It's too late. It's too late when problems come. And this is where my firm is specialist in sorting all that out.
So Norma, with regards to assets abroad, we have a question in the chat asking whether land owned in a different country is subject to the same process in terms of giving directive after one's demise.
In terms of that, Spain does not entertain trusts at all, and Spain go down the straightforward inheritance route. It depends on the laws of the country. Now, you know, the conquering days of English and English law are over, okay? But in terms of property in the West Indies, you can put notes for a discretionary trust or instructions for a discretionary trust, and then we would have to liaise with the lawyers in that country, but at least your wishes have been known. Very similar for Gambia. So some countries in Africa are very difficult to entertain the notion of a trust. But that doesn't mean to say that it's not something that can, it's something that can be dealt with. Let me tell you why. The first line after your name in a will is I revoke all former wills and testimony dispositions. So some people say, do a will for Spain, do a will for Africa, do a will for here. That's almost sort of revoking the document that you did before. So there should be a special clause that goes in the will that covers property in other lands, in other countries. Yeah, does that answer your question, Silvina?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's one suggestion. Any more questions?
What we'll do, Norma, for consistency, if you do conclude your presentation, then towards the end we can load
Right.
up the questions.
Okay, all right, okay. Savina mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation, lasting powers of attorney. Lasting powers of attorney is a document that gives your attorney rights over your property and finance and your health and welfare, which takes precedent over a will, because a will takes effect on your demise. The lasting power of attorney takes effect during your lifetime. The lasting power of attorney has to be registered at the office of the public guardian in order for it to be effective. It's sealed, it's got a special sealed number on it. You can have up to 4 attorneys and 4 reserve attorneys. But be careful when you're choosing attorneys that the people that you want to look after your finance or make decisions in respect of your health are the people that you can trust to make decisions for you. There are cases, numerous cases, where elderly people of the elderly generation have been told by their children to sign a property and welfare lasting power of attorney. And you don't think that the children will do anything that will put their parents in jeopardy. But it happens. The banks and all institutions know what a lasting power of attorney is for finance and property and finance, and they act on it. In the lasting powers of attorney, you can put notes, you can put preferences. Your attorneys can act jointly for some decisions, severally for others. All those things can be put in the lasting power of attorney. So yeah, so your attorneys can act jointly together or severally or jointly for some decisions, and the decisions must be noted, or severally for some decisions, okay? We have drafted lasting powers of attorney for people that have special dietary needs. Because sometimes they say, okay, you know, my hair must be twisted every 2 weeks, you know, I can only use coconut oil on my skin, etc., etc. I don't eat this, I don't eat that. When I become of a position when I cannot make a decision for myself, my attorney must make a decision for me, but they must make the decision in accordance with my preferences and my notations that are in my lasting power of attorney. The lasting power of attorney is effective on 2 different types. It can be effective immediately, or it can be effective as and when one does not have mental capacity. And the test for mental capacity is also a very specialist test. Okay, so when we see a client, we do all the checks, all the balances before we start drafting documents. We ensure that the attorneys know what their responsibilities are and when their responsibilities are to take effect. And that's it. So that's a brief overview of what my company does. Honest, Truthful Dialogue Consults UK. And that's it. I think this is the end of my brief presentation for now.
Thank you very much. Let's give our special guest a big round of applause for that opening presentation. So what I would like to ask you, Sister Norma, is first and foremost, what would you say to those of us who are of the mind, well, I don't have much, so, you know, what's the point of me even having a will, or, you know, even being interested in such a subject? And that person may be 40, they may even be in their 30s. So what would be the benchmark that you would use as a template to inspire those of us on this line to actually have our documentation in order, or to be thinking in regards to what you have shared with us this evening?
You may think that you don't have much, but HMC think you do. Let me tell you why. In terms of estate, as I said before, people think of their estate as purely a building. It's not. It's anything that you own as at the date of your demise. If you have a favorite watch and you want to say, I want my daughter to wear this watch on her wedding, or I want my daughter or my son to wear this watch on the first Sunday in every month. If you haven't got that written down in a legal document, it's not binding. Quite a lot of people say, I've written it on a note. Okay, but where is the note to become by? And is the note legally binding? No, the note can be challenged. It can be lost. So therefore, in terms of doing a will, the recommendation is that you have a look at your affairs every 5 years, because your situation changes for the better every 5 years. So therefore, review your estate every 5 years and ensure that your estate goes to the people that you want it to go to. You might have a favorite book and you want that book passed down as a legacy to your grandchild, and say, this is the book that I read when I was a child. I want my grandchild to also have a book. It's a first edition of Wuthering Heights or whatever. Yes? Do you get, yeah? Is
More
that
like
clear?
a dub plate from Dennis Brown or Bob Marley, or a couple of albums.
Right. So what you think is not worth anything is worth something to somebody, even if
Very
it's
good
of
point.
sentimental value.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Because even with vintage clothing nowadays, because we may think that, you know, clothing that we have doesn't, you know, have much value, but those things are becoming vintage by the day, and their value is increasing. So, so just to go back over this point, right? Because it really is, because what you're encouraging us to do is to have like a catalog of all of our possessions, right? And am I thinking along the right line? Should we catalog all of our possessions?
When you think of possessions, don't forget digital assets. Your pictures on Facebook that you've posted on Facebook are part of your possessions. They're digital assets. If anything happens to you and nobody has your passwords, etc., what happens to your Facebook account and all the pictures that you've posted on Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg will be making money off those pictures by using them in adverts later down the line. Where do you think they get those photos from that are on images? Yeah. So therefore, think. What I do is put an asset, give people an asset list, an asset and liability list. Yeah. So a catalog. Not necessarily. If you can photograph your favorite things, your favorite pieces of jewelry, that would be lovely. It helps the executors identify what needs to be distributed on your demise. Okay?
Fantastic. Sister Tara, Sylvina?
Go ahead.
So that I wish I could have, I had that thing, I could put the picture up with your mind exploding. I don't have that, but so much information, so much great information. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm like, my grandfather must have had a trust, because my grandmother's land was still, the taxes and everything continued to be paid, but she didn't work. and she used to get a stipend every month until she got remarried. So he must have had a trust. I'm just sitting here thinking about that, like, wow. But this information is so timely. And now I'm sitting here thinking about all the things I can catalog. I do have a question. So there was a question in the chat, and I also had the same question. Do you need to have more than one attorney?
It would be better. It would be better. If you have one child, and a child needs to make an important decision or sign some important documents and they cannot be found because they're out of the country, then the way that your life is conducted will be hindered because they cannot get hold of the one child. Yes. I would also recommend that attorneys are not also people of your same age. Some people put their friends down that are almost of the same age. Not a good idea. I would recommend you have attorneys of varying ages because they think differently as well.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
The other thing as well, lasting powers of attorney, there's something called an advance directive that goes with the lasting power of attorney. And that's what I normally do for people who have an illness, a long-term illness. To say, look, if this happens, I don't want this drug. If that happens, I don't want the other drug. You know, if this happens, this is where I need to be in terms of my health. And these are the decisions that I make in terms of my health before my attorney can make decisions for me in terms of my health. That advance directive has to be signed and registered by your GP. And then we lodge that along with your lasting power of attorney. Yeah, so it's a full suite of documentation, people.
Okay, so more than one attorney. Okay.
It's recommended.
It's recommended. It sounds like it's needed though if you have all these moving parts going on.
Yeah, especially in terms of property and finance, Tania. Yes, if you have one attorney in your property and finance lasting power of attorney, that attorney, and money changes people, believe me, I've seen it so many times. That attorney can wipe out your account, sell your house from underneath you, and do all sorts of other things, okay? If you have two that need to make a joint decision, it's a bit harder. It's a bit harder. So my recommendation is to have more than one. But if you can't find more than one, no problem. We can put the checks and balances in place to ensure that that one attorney does not take advantage of you and your estate.
Fantastic. I wanted to just tag on to that before you come in, Sister Sylvina, just to tag on to that same question. Is it not important then for us to really jump on the importance or jump on structuring these types of structures, if you will, and actually exposing our children to them as young as possible so that they appreciate, you know, that life is not forever, right? Because once you start writing a will and putting a trust together, you're actually accepting consciously that you're not going to live forever.
No,
right?
no.
And it's not the problem that too many of us approach every day like we're going to be here forever.
Abdul, take the doomdom out of your conversation. Please look at it as the way of putting things in order, putting a structure together. Right. Not because the inevitable will happen, which it will one day, but you are putting things in order. I'm not sure if you're aware of this incident where a girl went to a concert. I think it was at the O2. I think it was in Brixton. And there was a massive stampede.
Right, that was
sadly,
yeah.
Sadly, the young girl died. Yeah. Yes, the young girl died, leaving two young children.
Right.
She wasn't married. There were no instructions by her as to one, who should look after her children, because it's not always the case that the father can, or if the father's married, that the father's new partner wants the children in her household. Okay. So therefore, I encourage everybody over the age of 18, especially young mothers with children, to think about how, God forbid, if anything happens to them, or if they become impaired and cannot look after their children, who should be the guardians? How do I want my children brought up? Do I want them all to learn a language, play an instrument, go to university, or not even university, but to get a diploma degree or something? Leave instructions. You know, some of us are blessed to see our children grow up and see our grandchildren, you know, and we're still in good health. But some, when you have a look at the fractured families that really don't know what their mother thought or wanted for their lives, it's heartbreaking.
Great advice. Great advice. Silvina?
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to raise with you, Norma, guardianship. And I know you broached that subject with me yesterday, and even hearing what you just said, it is in the fact that you can have such a great impact and input on your child's life even after your demise. It's definitely something that we actually need to raise awareness of, because it's not just demise, it's you know, it's serious illness, it's, you know, loss of communication skills, it's so many things that happen regularly, unfortunately. So yeah, an amazing point. Thank you for raising that. The last thing I was just going to prompt you to just give a short synopsis of was probate. And yeah.
Okay, probate. Probate is the art of garnering in funds and distributing it. So if you think of it in those simple terms, if you have left a will, there's a very, very good idea as to where your funds are and who you want your estate to be distributed to. If you die intestate, that is without a will, there are very, very strict laws that have been put in place in the UK that says who your estate can be distributed to. If you have left a will, that's fine. If you haven't left a will, it's a bit more difficult, because sometimes we have to heir hunt, and that is expensive. We have to find out who is your next of kin, and that process is expensive. If we cannot find your next of kin, I'm going to use Abdul's words, the estate goes to, yes, the crown, okay? Have you worked all your life for those who are richer to become even richer from your blood, sweat, and tears again?
No.
Just for a half-hour appointment with a piece of paper called a will with 2 witnesses, leave instructions.
Very good. Very good. As we wind down, this has been a great classroom for us, really great.
Yes.
University classroom. So there are questions coming in thick and fast. So before I ask mine, let me just defer now to yourself, Silvina.
Well, we do have, with regards to the questions at the top of the program, I did say that next week, the 25th, we will be delving deeper into, this is an overview today, so we'll be delving somewhat deeper into wills and legal powers of attorney. The following week, the 6th of June, we will be delving deeper into trusts. So I would, encourage you to, honor this overview. Make sure you stay in touch and make sure you're here next week and the week after, so that we can give more time to your actual specific questions.
Just one thing.
I think most importantly too, don't think you understood everything that was said.
Right.
We need to have a quick recap before we leave today.
Yes.
Because sometimes we're so quick, we want to run ahead. I want to know more. Okay. Did you get the ABCs of today? Let's just get the basics in place. So I'm going to offer us, Sister Norma, if you would just give us an overview of what you discovered today and the salient points that you would like everybody to take home as takeaways so that we can start with part 2 next week. Please proceed.
Okay, I'm just going to give you an ABC overview, but before I do that, there was a question in the chat. How can a trust protect assets over 325 plus the 175? Okay. That is called a nil rate band. It's not a trust, it's just called the nil rate band plus the residence nil rate band. The residence nil rate band goes to lineal descendants. 325 is the amount of assets that everybody in the country is allowed to own free of tax. Over that, you're paying 40%. But if you're passing any part of your estate to lineal descendants in a will, yes, and this takes effect on your demise. So if you change the will and therefore the resident nil rate band is not in the will, that is your descendants have lost the chance to get an extra £175,000. So it's quite convoluted, but that's just quick, right? So let me do the ABC one. A is for assets. Everybody has them, and assets matter. B, assets matter because the government will get 40% of your hard-earned money over the nil rate band of 325 if you do not do a will. And C, thank you for coming. See you next week.
So let's take our devices off of mute and let's give our very special guest, Norma Wright, a well-deserved massive round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Minister, very much.
Thank you.
Merci, Norma. Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to
Thank
Allah.
you, sister. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with all of you. And yeah, alaikum salam. Hi. Hi.
Thank you. So over to yourself, Sylvina, for closing remarks.
Right. So this is as mentioned at the start of the program. Next week, our very dear, very quality. She hasn't mentioned she has over 42 years of experience as a lawyer. And one thing that she alluded to but didn't bring to the forefront, but she did with me yesterday, was the fact that, let me take this down, was the fact that experience, the experience and the thought process of the person who is putting these documents together goes a long way to securing their integrity and to warding off any potential challenges and legal challenges after one's demise or after one has a serious illness where you can no longer communicate. And that's something that is key, because she mentioned yesterday, yes, you can go online and get a will for $19.99, but actually the wills are full of holes. So having someone with that experience and having someone with a level of integrity and really caring as much as possible, for what it is that they're providing for you is key. So stay tuned, you're in the right place, stay tuned for the rest of this series.
And also see this as an opportunity for you to be an ambassador for your family and for your project. Use this opportunity, if you're on this call, this Zoom this evening, to be the one who puts an end to your bloodline, living and amassing wealth in all its various forms, and then just allowing the state to just do with it whatsoever they desire. Be the one, you be the one to take advantage to end this kind of ignorance in your family. Because so many of us are trying to be focused on ending poverty in our bloodline, but you might end poverty by being the first one to amass a certain amount of wealth, but you also might be the one to leave the most money to the state. You know, so, so do you want to be a winner and a loser in one lifetime? So with that said, let's win. Let's just be about winning. You know, if God blesses you to acquire something, then he also wants you to keep and pass on, you know, to your loved ones whom, you know, you desire to be the beneficiary. He wants you to do that in an organized, constructive way, okay? And just lastly, Sister Sylvina just said, you know, is there actually anybody in your family who you trust enough to be a trusted? And this will help us to build relations with family members, because you're going to need them. You might not need them now in life, but you might need them after your demise. For someone with a steady head and a member of your family you might not get on the best with at the moment, but they're a person of integrity. This is a chance for you to build your relations and strengthen them, you know, so that those relations will benefit you beyond the grave. So there's a lot to think about until next week, Thursday. And some of you are asking for Sister Norma's details. You can find her details online, but what's most importantly, we don't want everybody bombarding Norma at this time, because she's given us 3 weeks of her time, plus a masterclass. And if you attend these classes, it will benefit you exponentially. That after that time, if you want any more specific training, and please, you can go directly to our sister, but try and come for the next 3 weeks and attend the masterclass and see what you get out of it. Do your damnness between now and next week, Thursday, to bring 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of your family. This should be a family discussion, you know, a conference with you and all of your family members to discuss. Have you all considered this? Because I was on a very exciting Zoom conference call, and this is what I learned, A, B, C, D, because I hope most of you weren't just here listening and trying to remember everything. You didn't have your notepad and your pens or your pencils with you. Then luckily we will send you the replay so that you can, you know, reconsider that which was discussed this evening. So those of you who are registered in our WhatsApp group or our Telegram group, you will get the replay within the next 24 hours. So if you can post the Telegram information in the chat, so those who are not part of it can sign up today and enjoy the replay, so that next week, just like coming to class, we would have done our homework, okay? And we're not going to ask questions next week that was discussed this week, okay? Because we're just not going to entertain that. Next week is a new week, fresh information, and we're going to move things forward, okay? So with that said, it's been a delight, Sister Norma, a delight having you on this evening. We have enjoyed you exponentially, and we have learned a lot, and we will reflect on the lessons that you have taught us, because we do intend to be ambassadors of our families' wealth and our families' accomplishments on all levels. So spiritual injection, once again, please give Norma Wright a big, massive rapturous.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, sister. Thank you, Minister.
So everybody, all what's left for me to do is thank you and bid you a good night, and I look forward to seeing you next week, Thursday. Take good care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nice.
Thank you, spiritual injection.